And now the details. Gay rights activist Maurice Tomlinson has lost his bid to challenge Jamaica's buggery law. Tomlinson had tried to have the buggery law nullified in all cases of adult consensual sex. In the Supreme Court today, the three-member panel of judges who heard the constitutional claim ruled that particular sections of the Offences Against the Person Act could not be inquired into. Justice David Batts explained that based on the 2011 constitutional amendments, the Savings Law Clause prevents the court from inquiring into sections of the legislation which prohibits buggery.
In the final analysis, the words enacted in Section 1312 of the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms, Constitutional Amendment Act 2011, are clear. Parliament intended to protect laws related to sexual offences from review for unconstitutionality. This was done in the same year changes were made to the pre-existing Offences Against the Person Act. There is consequently no warrant for a suggestion that the amendments either change the nature of the law or prevent the Savings Law Clause having effect. I would, for all the reasons stated, uphold the preliminary point in favour of the defendants and dismiss the claim. The judgment is concurred in by my sisters, albeit with far fuller reasoning. We all agree that we will hear submissions on costs. So the order of the court is the constitutionality of Section 76, 77, and 79 of the Offences Against the Person Act cannot be inquired into in the light of the Savings Law Clause in Section 1312 of the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms in the Constitution of Jamaica. The claim, in consequence, stands dismissed.
Justice David Batts. A second defendant has pleaded guilty to the murder and kidnapping of opposition lawmaker Philip Paulwell's 10-month-old daughter Soraya Paulwell and her mother, 27-year-old Tashina Patterson. Roshane Miller pleaded guilty today in the Home Circuit Court to 2 counts of conspiracy to kidnap, 2 counts of accessory before the fact to murder, and 2 counts of misprision of felony. A similar plea was made by a male co-accused yesterday who pleaded guilty in the Home Circuit Court to 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of kidnapping. His name is being withheld for security reasons. Both men will be sentenced on November 15. Soraya and her mother were reportedly taken from their home in St. Andrew on September 9. 4 people, including U.S. Naval Officer Leota Bradshaw, are charged with their murders. It's alleged that Bradshaw conspired with 3 men to commit the murders and put out a $500,000 contract for the acts. 30-year-old dental assistant Coyote Satchel, who is charged with the murder of 8-year-old Daniel Rowe, was denied bail when she appeared in the Home Circuit Court today. Satchel is to return to court on November 30. Members of the media were barred from the hearing, but it's reported that prosecutors raised concern that Satchel has no fixed address. Daniel, who was a student at the Brayton Primary and Infant School in Port St. Catherine, was abducted from the institution on June 8. Later that day, she was found with her throat slashed along Roosevelt Avenue in St. Andrew. The girl was taken to a hospital where she died 2 days later. Defense lawyer Donovan Collins told us that his client's bail was denied due to several factors, including concern for her safety. Mr. Collins said he is looking forward to the matter being heard at trial so that it can be resolved.
The matter went before the court today. We made an application for bail for Ms. Satchel. Bail was refused. One of the main grounds for refusing bail was under Section 4.3 of the Bail Act of Jamaica, in which bail can be denied if it is that there is a concern for the safety of the accused. We now look forward to the matter going to trial so that this matter can come to an end as quick as possible.
Defense lawyer Donovan Collins. Manchester continues to see an uptick in murders linked to domestic violence. The Constabulary's Domestic Violence Intervention Liaison Officer, Deputy Superintendent of Police Jacqueline Dillon, said the parish is leading the island in this regard. She notes that the cases range from disputes over land to disagreements between intimate partners.
We are having too many murders out of domestic violence. Manchester, I want to leave the island, you know. Sounds strange, don't? Yeah, man. Manchester leading the island in domestic violence murders. Man a kill woman, woman a kill man.
She notes that domestic violence is not only linked to older persons, as many children find themselves in abusive relationships.
Young persons like you are getting yourselves involved in domestic violence relationships, unhealthy relationships. Boyfriend are beaten up, girlfriend are beaten up. And many of you can't speak about it because if you're under 16 by law, you can't give consent for have sex. By law, you're not supposed to even have no relationship. And then the community turns a blind eye to it because the community is saying, it's not my business. But in order to talk about domestic violence and reduce incidents of domestic violence, we have to care. We all have to care. And our caring has to be outside of our homes.
Domestic Violence Intervention Liaison Officer, Deputy Superintendent of Police Jacqueline Dillon. She was speaking at a domestic violence intervention pop-up in Mandeville yesterday. The St. James Police have identified the victims of a double murder which occurred in the parish yesterday. Dead are 22-year-old Imani Jarrett, otherwise called Prim, of Refuge Lane, Flower Hill in St. James, and 30-year-old Dane Smith, otherwise called Puns, also of Flower Hill in St. James, and Logwood in Withorn, Westmoreland. Reports from the St. James Police are that about 1 p.m. yesterday, Jarrett and Smith were passengers in a taxi when the driver slowed at a speed bump. A group of 5 men armed with rifles and handguns approached the vehicle and ordered the occupants not to move. Smith and Jarrett reportedly ran from the motor car, and the gunmen opened gunfire at them. The driver sped off and escaped harm. The police were summoned, and on their arrival, the bodies were seen on the roadway. The St. James Police, along with the Major Investigations Division, are conducting investigations. The National Partnership Council says it remains committed to working with the Crime Monitoring and Oversight Committee, CMOC, to partner on initiatives aimed at fighting and preventing crime. Minister with responsibility for skills and digital transformation, Dr. Dana Morris-Dixon, who is a coordinating minister on the council, said there were issues with previous collaborations on crime fight that the council is actively remedying. The council, which was first launched in 2011, is a social dialogue collaboration involving the government, trade unions, parliamentary opposition, private sector, and various members of civil society.
I think we would all agree that crime is our number one challenge in Jamaica. And it is important that we have a partnership agreement around crime. And that is the administration's position on it. And I've spent a lot of time since I've become coordinating minister on this particular matter. And there were some issues of disagreement amongst partners in terms of the crime fight. And there was one particular issue, of course, we know, in terms of the SOEs. And it is important that when we have disagreements, that we stay at the table and that we continue talking and we get to some level of consensus. And I have been meeting with the CMOC team in our partnership meeting on Wednesday, chaired by our Prime Minister. The issue of CMOC came up and the issue of having a partnership around crime came up, and there is still commitment towards that.
She says there will also be a revamping of CMOC to renew and revisit its targets and to engage new stakeholders for the fight against crime.
So we think that in the middle, after doing a couple of years of CMOC, it's a good time for us to refresh it, look back at it, look at the targets. Are these the right targets? What about the role of the private sector? Because if you look at all of the items that were there, they were all items to be done by the government. But I think you'd also agree that crime cannot be solved only by the government. There's a role for civil society, there's a role for academia, there's also a role for the church. So it is very important in this new refresh where we just look at what were the targets that we had, add a few new targets, and also have some of our partners also have targets so that it's more demonstrable that this is a true partnership around addressing the crime issue. We have some scheduled for next week too to get back at the table. And so what we want to look at That is a refresh of the numbers. Also, many of the items that hadn't moved as quickly were the legislative ones. But I can tell you that from the government side, we are committed to our partnership on crime, and we are demonstrating that through our discussions with the CMOC team.
Minister with responsibility for skills and digital transformation, Dr. Dana Morris-Dixon. She was speaking at this morning sitting of the Senate. An inmate who escaped from the Tambin Farm Adult Correctional Center in St. Catherine yesterday has been recaptured. Nathan Whitler, otherwise known as Nitty or Kimar, was captured at a house on King Street in Port Antonio, Portland at about 11:05 this morning. According to reports, at about 9:50 a.m. yesterday, Whitler escaped from a group of 12 inmates who were working on a farm. Police say he was seen running towards the main road, and the officers on the ground gave chase. However, Whitler eluded the correctional officers. Whitler was incarcerated for illegal possession of a firearm and ammunition and sentenced to 4 years for the offenses. Opposition spokesman on health, Dr. Maurice Guy, is calling on the Ministry of Health to provide regular updates to the people of St. James on the progress of refurbishing the Cornwall Regional Hospital. During a tour of the facility, Dr. Guy said, while he is pleased with the work being undertaken, citizens are questioning when access will be restored to the facility. The opposition is therefore recommending that government offers periodic updates to citizens. Dr. Guy said over the years, the project has received a lot of criticisms due to the extended delays for completion.
Now, we are told that it has gone to $14.5 billion and possibly counting. And the explanation for that is that we are told now that that $14.5 billion will include the need to all brand new equipment that the hospital will need. We are concerned about the standardization of the equipment that is going to be here, that we do not have a problem where we are going to be having equipment that will not be functioning after a period of time, and we have difficulty in getting, as a country, getting spare parts for. So whether this particular facility would also have a certain standardization with the Western Children and Adolescent Hospital, so they have some unification in terms of equipment. So in terms of repair and in terms of maintenance, that we will have almost a seamless operation.
Opposition spokesman on health, Dr. Maurice Guy. The Cornwall Regional Hospital was forced to close its doors to the public in 2017 when toxic fumes from the ventilation system saturated the hospital, leading to urgent evacuation of both patients and staff. Citizens in Montego Bay and its environs have been forced to seek medical attention elsewhere. The Health Ministry has indicated that persons, especially children, who were already exposed to dengue fever are more likely to require hospitalization with a secondary infection. National epidemiologist Dr. Karen Obstakar pointed out that while dengue stereotype 2 usually causes more severe illness in children, most of the cases being seen now relate to secondary infections. She was responding to questions during a forum hosted by the University of the West Indies on killing the buzz, the fight against dengue and other mosquito-borne diseases.
When you look at this, some studies say yes, type 2 has more severe disease than others, but others say differently. What is more indicative or can predict greater level of severity is the history or having had another dengue serotype that increases your risk of severe disease. So since 2010, when type 2 last predominated, we have had predomination of all the other types. And so some of these secondary infections, and hence why we're seeing more severe disease. So if I had to come down on one, I was thinking it is probably a more secondary infection than per se type 2 being more severe.
National epidemiologist Dr. Karen Webster Carr. Citing reports that some females in Jamaica are allegedly using banana leaves as sanitary napkins, a government senator has suggested that menstrual products be offered free of cost through 2 support programs. Senator Shireen Golding Campbell said financially challenged women and girls should be given the option to access the products under the Program of Advancement through Health and Education, PATH, and the National Health Fund, NHF. Speaking at this morning's sitting of the Upper House, she lamented that being unable to afford period products affects the work and school life of many females.
Mr. President, in 2023, we still have women who must opt out of productive life because of the inability to afford a most basic and necessary component essential to their productivity. And I'm talking about the women and girls in our country who are enduring period poverty. Without access to menstrual supplies, girls may resort to using toilet paper, dirty rags, leaves. There are accounts of girls using banana leaves, or even using a sanitary pad for more than one day, which is not recommended. If our women don't have access to clean water, the situation can be further exacerbated, making it difficult for them to hygienically manage their periods. If you take a look at the GDC, you will see reports that period poverty can negatively affect mental health. We must ensure that the 45% of our workforce that contribute to our national economy are not affected by period poverty and are able to fully participate in work and school and avoid the loss of potentially 2 months of absence that may currently be faced when there's an inability to afford the cost of sanitary products.
The senator argued that supporting women and girls with affordable and accessible menstrual products should be on the national agenda.
If you can imagine that women and girls who are PATH beneficiaries and on the school feeding program are unable to afford school lunches and breakfast, then you can imagine that ending period poverty may very well be something that can be fixed under the PATH program. Access to period products could possibly be funded and delivered through the distributive network of the PATH program. But there are other mechanisms that may support reaching the women and girls affected by period poverty. For instance, the National Health Fund, which was established among other things to provide prescribed health benefits to all residents, to make pharmaceutical and medical supplies accessible and available, that is attributable to personal and family health care problems. A period is not a disease. It is something which, if not dealt with in a hygienic manner, may lead to disease and certainly can lead to loss of productivity for those women unable to afford sanitary products and absent themselves from work. The NHF, with its network of provider pharmacies and public pharmacies, may well be placed to ensure the distribution of period products to our vulnerable women and girls.
She noted that while menstrual products have been exempted from tax, more can be done to reduce the cost of these items.
But, Mr. President, there are still other duties and fees that apply, which include import duties of 20%, a standard compliance fee of 0.3%, and an environmental levy of 0.5%, and as well a customs administration fee. So the cost of the product includes at least, before you do any markup, a 20.8% increase in the cost. The fact is that the vast majority of sanitary products are imported. Very few are made here in Jamaica. And while the quality made here in Jamaica is excellent, the cost is higher than the imported brand. Mr. President, whether these fees can be removed is an assessment that must be undertaken by the Ministry of Finance. And I implore the Minister to take a look at how we can best make these products as affordable as possible.
Government Senator Cherie Golding Campbell. She also called for a national study to be done to determine how many females are affected by period poverty in Jamaica, as well as the ways in which they are affected. Tourism Minister Edmund Bartlett said all state agencies must have service excellence systems in place to enhance the quality of service given to the public. He was speaking at the Public Sector Service Excellence Awards ceremony at the Spanish Court Hotel in Kingston. The minister said service excellence is critical and is a fundamental pillar of a thriving society.
So the sheer enormity of government's responsibility makes it critical that we take seriously the effective implementation of a framework of service excellence in the public sector that will provide quality in service delivery and enhance how we do business with the government on a community, national and international scale. 60% of the value of the experience, of our visitor is service. By delivering exceptional service to its citizens, businesses and visitors, a nation can attract investments, stimulate productivity, and enhance its global competitiveness. Service excellence enhances social well-being and the quality of life. It ensures that citizens have access to essential services such as healthcare and education, transportation, utilities, just to mention a few more. This fosters in turn social cohesion and reduces inequities. When government agencies, businesses and institutions consistently deliver high-quality service, people develop faith in their abilities and intentions.
Tourism Minister Edmund Bartlett, these Service Excellence Awards recognized organizations that have demonstrated a strong commitment to the implementation of improvements in key service delivery areas.